We should be live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our guests and welcome council. This is our first meeting in the month of March. And I'd like us to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered today in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today we gather with the intent, followed by the living peace and friendship treaties with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have an agenda in front of us, council.
Move that we approve the agenda as circulated.
Seconded by Councilor Lonis Brock. On the motion. All in favor, agenda is approved. Lovely. Second item on the agenda is special minutes of the special meeting of the 29th of February 2024.
Move to be moved, approved as circulated.
Approved by Councilor. Also, Councilor Feeney. Approved by Councilor. By Councilor Carver. I don't know why I'm struggling with your last name. And seconded by Councilor Feeney. The question. Minutes are approved. Minutes of February 29th regular council meeting. Move to be approved by Councilor Lonis Brock, seconded by. I know I can see it. I just can't pronounce it. Councilor now. My apologies.
Okay.
Question. I'm so used to saying first names and I don't say the first names. I'm struggling with that. Normally we have a public input session and I can see we have lots of folks in the council chambers. Is anybody present here to offer their thoughts? Comments, questions?
We're going to be presentations, I assume.
Yeah, your slot is there. It's just for the public. If they have something to share with council, we normally give them some time to do that. Yeah, that's why I'm looking around to see if somebody's. No, we don't take any from YouTube, do we?
At these.
No.
No, okay. Thank you. Presentations. We have two presentations today, and the very first one comes from the Rural Communities Foundation of Nova Scotia. And I believe we have two guests on that. Welcome. I'm assuming you'll introduce yourselves and
Sure.
rather than me doing that.
Okay.
Welcome.
Put you both right. Camera off for screen. Presentation.
And just to double check, in terms of time.
Excuse me.
No, it's okay.
I think it's like 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's just wanted to double check that.
It's on all there.
It's on all there. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you this evening. I'm Hugh McKay with the Rural Communities Foundation of Nova Scotia. And I'm joined this evening by the Executive Director of the Foundation, Penny Day. And we're here really to create awareness. We're trying to increase awareness of the Rural Communities Foundation, the activities that we're involved in. And in particular, I'm going to highlight, I guess, our flagship program, the Dave Gunning Zero Hunger Fund, and we'll come to that shortly. So I'll just say a few moments on who we are, what we do, some of the activities we're involved in. And when I speak here of ask for consideration, what I'm speaking of primarily is awareness, asking for your consideration to, with your business networks, with your personal networks and so forth, when opportunity presents itself, to perhaps keep in mind some of the work that we're doing and how it might be something you could help us with. So who we are. We're one of about 200 community foundations across the country. Here in Nova Scotia, we complement the good work that's done by the Community Foundation of Nova Scotia. By our name, Rural Community Foundation, we obviously have a focus on the rural parts of the province, which are in great need, but sometimes are overlooked in the works that the Community Foundation does with all their good work. We've been around for a while. We're not a new kid on the block. We've been around for about 20 years, and some of you have probably heard of the Rural Communities Foundation before, but not necessarily everybody. And so that's part of what we're trying to do today, is bring that awareness up to municipal councils. I think this is the 10th presentation to a municipal council I've done in the past no more than 2 months anyway. So I've seen a lot of council chambers in the past little while. We're a registered charity, federally registered. And so, of course, that makes us accountable, not just to CRA, but to our donors, to our grantees and so forth. We are completely transparent. And we're not working in a silo. We're a member of the Community Foundations of Canada and of the Nova Scotia Not-for-Profit Coalition and numerous other organizations of a similar nature. So what do we do? Well, our mission really is to promote sustainability and local improvements in rural Nova Scotia and local communities. We convene meetings of people who have challenges and are looking for solutions to some of their local challenges, and we convene people we bring together for such purposes. Primarily what we're known for, though, is the fundraising and the granting that we do. Where we have organizations that have come to us that need some assistance, we get involved in fundraising and then providing grants out into the community. As a charitable organization, we do give out tax receipts, of course, based on the donation we receive. But we also administer trust funds on behalf of individuals and organizations. And if you have questions on that, Penny's the person to ask. Some of our current projects. On behalf of the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, we are managing the resettlement fund in Nova Scotia for Ukrainian refugees who come here fleeing the terrible invasion of their country by Russia. And so helping them to get established here and rebuild their lives here in Nova Scotia. The Joan Fineman Climate Change Fund is named after Joan Fineman, an American astrophysicist and very active climate change activist who passed away. Her family had deep roots here in Nova Scotia, however, and they set up a fund to support climate change programs. And of course, that's a very timely thing with threats of sea level rise and forest fires and all the other climate change related disasters we're facing. And a lot of municipalities, such as your own, I'm sure, are looking at climate change programs. And this fund provides 50-50 funding or some formula for supporting some of these initiatives out of the Joan Fineman Fund. And that program just reopened for applications a couple of weeks ago. Housing for Help is an interesting program. What it does is supports finding housing for medical practitioners coming to a community. And these medical practitioners could be doctors, they could be lab techs, nurses, whatever. We don't have a stock of housing. We all know housing's in a crisis, not just in Nova Scotia, but across the country. But we do occasionally get donations of property. And sometimes we're able to flip that over to a health practitioner coming to an area, or just to sell it at market value and put these funds into our trust for use as it's required. Of course, as a federally regulated charity, we're able to give the donor a tax receipt for the market value of that property, which can then be applied for their use on the income tax. The Soaring Eagle Fine Arts Grants. This is led by a Cape Breton artist, Jason Drake, and is to support Two-Spirit. Did I get the name wrong?
Drake Jensen.
Drake, yeah, okay. I'm working on it. I mean, I hear Drake and I just think of rap in Toronto. But this fund, Drake set it up to assist Two-Spirit LGBTQ artists who are young artists who are trying to get a name for themselves out there in that community, and so this fund is to provide supports for them. One reason that some of you may have heard of the Rural Communities Foundation before is that we do community impact conferences, and we try to do one or two of these each year. Last summer, we did a program up in Membertou with a climate change focus, and we had various municipalities speaking at that in regard to their own plans and activities that they've undertaken. And so we continue to try to do one or two of these per year. The flagship program right now, though, is the Dave Gunning Zero Hunger Fund. And some, perhaps all of you may be familiar with Dave, a well-known Nova Scotian musician out of Pictou County. This program started about a year ago. We started putting the infrastructure together for it. And at that time, Bruce Guthrow came to us and offered to lend his name to the program. Unfortunately, as you may know, Bruce's health is declining, and he sadly passed away last year. Before he passed, he asked his good friend Dave Gunning if Dave would pick up that chair with us and work with us to grow this program, the Zero Hunger Fund. And Dave's just been a wonderful guy to work with on this program. He's done a couple of different concerts where all the funds came directly to the Zero Hunger Fund. We can always tell when Dave's done a concert, just one of his regular concerts, because the next day we always get a flood of donations coming in. So we know he's out there every time at a concert that he's promoting the program. So I guess I've covered the first line there, but what's the program for? Well, it's to support free pantries, or sometimes they're called free stores, that are located within schools. And we're looking particularly at rural Nova Scotian schools in this case of supporting them. A free pantry is a spot in the school where a student can go and pick up nutritional food supplies to take home with them. And this is, we haven't invented this. It's going on in about 80% of the schools in Nova Scotia at this time. And it differs from the in-school programs, the breakfast, lunch, snack programs that get provincial funding. These free pantries aren't supported by any level of government. They're all acting individually at a school level, and it's the school staff that are providing the resources to keep the shelves stocked in that pantry. And that's a real burden on them, obviously, and it's probably unsustainable in the long term. And so we were approached by some schools to see if we could lend some assistance. And this is what I meant going back to our original mission of convening people, meeting people, fundraising and granting. So we got on board with them and said, sure, we'll do an awareness campaign, we'll do fundraising, and then we'll provide, when these funds are accumulated, we'll provide grants to the schools. Coming back to the difference about this, these free pantries, the kids they can go to a discrete location in the school, maybe a library, maybe a guidance counselor's office where the pantry exists. And then in a nondescript backpack or some sort of a bag, they can take food home with them without fear of being shamed by other kids or any of the stuff that could happen that way. The kids who make use of this they're well known to the teachers. The teachers know which kids are coming into the classroom who aren't getting nutrition at home. They can tell from their attention span. They can tell by their results in their academic work. Typically, or not typically, but many of these kids are the same ones who are having challenges with mental health issues or substance abuse issues. And so providing nutrition for them is one of the ways of addressing several problems. And we're not replacing food banks. We're supplementing, we're complementing food banks. All the food banks right across the province are under stress, they're underfunded and overly required services. So we're supplementing that by just providing another venue for funds to come in to support pantries, to support food banks. So our goal right now, our 23-24 goal is to raise $200,000. And from that, we will then be giving we will open up applications for up to $5,000 per school. $5,000 being chosen because that's what the student or the teachers and so forth running these programs have said, this is what it costs to stock a school to get up and running. Fine. So we'll provide grants of up to $5,000. If you've already got a program in place and you're just looking to replenish, then we'll provide something equivalent. We're going to open up the program when we get to $100,000. We want to make sure we've got a certain threshold there before we do. We're over 25% of the way there. We've got $63,000 already in public donations. And now we're going to initiate a corporate fundraising campaign. We're also applying for community grants from municipal governments where appropriate, where it works. And I should add to all that, that funds raised locally are going to be spent or granted within the community. So if we're getting funds in Yarmouth, they're not going to Tatamagouche and so forth. So just finalizing this then, here to provide corporate awareness for you today. We certainly wouldn't reject any donations. If any of you wanted to make them or share with your contact networks in business and personal, we would appreciate it. If the time comes at some point that we have applied for a community grant, fine and dandy. And I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. It's a tight timeline. Unfortunately, tonight we had 2 presentations.
Sure.
It just makes it tricky for us. Council, do you have any questions, comments?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the next presentation is by the McLeod Group. So it's similar to the last, and I want to introduce yourself. That's easier.
Cameras on there.
Thank you, appreciate it, council. Thank you for having me back. For those of you, I think I've met everybody except yourself. Hi, Eric Ramsey Duff. I'm the CEO of McLeod Group. So the company owns Mahone Bay Nursing Home, and we're doing a construction project just around the corner from you folks. I think you probably know my colleague a lot better than you know myself, but Tina Henniger, who has been leading the initiatives around our new employees, and Tina's going to talk about that in just a moment. It'll take just a few moments. I understand from Mayor Deviney. Hello, Mayor. Hope it's nice and warm where you are. That you were seeking a bit of an update on the project and had some specific questions. So Tina and I are going to take just a couple of minutes on a few updates, anticipating some of your questions, but we definitely will leave you some time. We do have a completion date for construction, end of May, and a move date for July 9th. So there will be some formal communications because there's some coordination with the town, mainly around traffic that day, but we have those dates firmly in place now. The current site, there is no formal plan yet for the current site. At this point, it will be decommissioned. We're waiting for some further instruction from the Department of Seniors and Long-Term Care. I would just caution you, so we do own that site, meaning McLeod Group does. As some of you likely know, the reason why we got started on this great adventure is because that building is in very difficult shape, including quite a significant problems around mold. It will not be appropriate for renovation and reuse. It will be demolished. So the site is another question. It may become available for either a general sale or alternative uses. We haven't received direction yet from the department. They have first dibs on the property. A couple of other quick notes, and then I'm going to turn over to my colleague. The remaining aspects of the site, and one of the main deficiencies that I know some of the community members have been concerned about, we missed the planting season last year, and one of the items in the development agreement was to have the plantings in and growing to achieve certain standards of privacy. We've clearly missed that. As some of you may be aware, we have had some great difficulties around the site, particularly around water management, and there's been quite a lot of erosion and damage to the property from water coming down from across the street. We're still going to be working with you on some of that in terms of managing the stormwater and sewer water. So we will get our plantings done this year, but it is obviously behind. We are going to try to plant some more mature, so not to be overly technical, but we are planting things of this size, anticipating that it has an opportunity to grow quicker. We're probably gonna have to plant some things that are larger. And so we'll be able to do some catch up within reason, but it's an obvious deficiency that we're still working on. The other major element that you'll obviously note is Dexter Construction will be bringing the paving and the sidewalks and gutters, and we want to get that done before we formally invite the fire and emergency folks to come with their vehicles to the building so they've been on site a couple times, I think, already, and they're familiarizing themselves with the site, but we'll go through that additional step once the property is actually ready to receive heavy vehicles. So with that, I think what you really want to hear is from my colleague and some of the stories around our new employees.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us. And I know all of you, so I feel like I'm among friends. This is the largest immigration project that has been undertaken in Canada, second largest in North America. Oh,
For the public.
Your name?
oh, pardon me, Tina Henniger. Settlement coordinator with McLeod Group. Thank you. So we have, since starting this initiative a year ago when I was hired with McLeod Group in December of 2023, we have now welcomed 29 newcomers to Mahone Bay, 29.5 because we do have someone who's expecting, so very exciting. We have 23 of those people who are healthcare workers working in our facility currently. We have 3 little ones going to Bayview Community School and 1 library volunteer. So I know it's very exciting for you, Suzanne. We have a new community board member, Francis. That's where you and I met, the Lunenburg County Community Board. So I was pretty proud and happy that we joined that board. 4 new languages being spoken at Bayview. This town has gained 5 new parishioners in one or several other churches, 16 new mosque members at our mosque and blockhouse, 15 new members of the Mahone Bay United Soccer Club, which is a huge, huge asset to this initiative. It's great for mental health. We have a new pastor in town, a new author, community leader, a new barber in town, who he had a second job as a barber in Africa. 108 employees have become members, mentors, and friends. And of course, our residents have received their care. So a huge impact on our community. We purchased 29 beds from Abe's Furniture. So Yam is very pleased with us. And I make the call, and the next day I get a bed. So we have excellent service from him. Our furniture stores, our pharmacy has been amazing. Our postmaster, our grocery store is trying really hard to be accommodating, which I appreciate. The ladies at BMO, I call, can I have an appointment? They make me an appointment the next day. Access Nova Scotia has been really incredible. Our community has been, as we probably all expected, our community has been very welcoming. I have a lot of stories that I'd love to share. We just don't have the time to hear them today, of the community being very kind and, as you mentioned, picking folks up, driving them home during the rain, donating things, drives to Halifax. I can't count all the amazing stories, but I'd love to invite everyone to an event, which I understand you have a meeting the same day. It's been very difficult booking this meeting. We've postponed our Love Letters from Africa event, which will be held on March 25th. Bear in mind, a government office as well as it's going to be broadcasted. So there's a lot of different players in mind. So while I really wanted to reschedule it to have you folks not have a meeting that day, sadly you do, I understand, but please spread the word, invite staff who can come and report, or I'm happy to come back and report from this meeting. But if you could share this with all your friends and staff, that would be great. So any questions that you have for
Time
us
for
on
that
the
event?
initiative? Pardon me?
Time for that event?
It's 7 o'clock. 7 to, we'll end abruptly at 9. So really you get to hear from our newcomers, not necessarily me. I will be the host, but we'll hear stories from our newcomers and then have a little taste of Africa. As been doing some shopping at the African store in Halifax, and so I'm excited to have us and get to talk to them and get to know them, as well as taste some of the flavors from Africa.
Thank you.
Maybe one other quick, just sort of before, those 23 form what will be approximately 120 to 140 total employees. That's almost not quite double current. We'll have a payroll of about $7 million. That's about $3 million more than the current payroll. And the total annual spending out of the new building will be something in the range of 10 to 11 million. That's about 4 to 5 million more than the current. So it's a pretty significant economic boost for the community. Happy to take any
I have a
questions.
question, who's gonna take the letters when you get accused of bringing in wingers for the football team?
I didn't get that. I take it as a compliment. Any questions from Mr. Council?
Thank you so much. It's such an exciting development. It really is. So thank you both. Thank you all. For the event, the event that we can't go to because we have a meeting at exactly the same time. It's so difficult. Would there be facilities there to receive a digital message from somebody here? Or if that was to be worked out?
Certainly, I mean, we can zoom it in, and so that people who aren't able to attend can hear those stories, because they are, you know, important stories, so. And if someone wanted to say something, someone from council, certainly that's something that we can.
It was not that I was thinking of a message from the mayor or something.
Right.
Yeah,
For sure.
if it was workable.
Yeah. Totally workable.
June, that's good. June 9th?
July.
9th? July 9th.
June 9th, June 9th, June 9th.
This is gonna be a.
Oh, June ninth?
Wow.
Oh, I thought you said
I
July.
thought-
Yeah, you said,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did. I said July 9th. Hang on, let me check my book. We have 5 of these underway, so just give me 1 second. July, you're
July.
July 9th. See, this is how you get yourself in trouble. Okay, July 9th.
So, just trying to, recall, how long an odyssey it's been from, for your business, from the time you originally envisioned the project until July 9th.
Yeah.
Can you just refresh our memory on when you corporately would have come to the conclusion that the new building and the new facility was required, and when you just sort of started the process?
So 2018 would be the year, and it was the summer of 2018 that some of the first conversations occurred. The construction itself is going to end up being just a little shy of 36 months probably, but 2018.
You'll be able to process off your list.
And then on to the next one.
And the next one, fair enough.
We'll be very grateful, yeah.
Who will fill those 30 new beds? Where will the new residents come from?
So this is part of a provincial system. So they most likely are individuals who are up South Shore. And they highly likely they are probably in hospital now. And they would have identified Mahone Bay as their preferred location to go to in their ranking system. So highly likely they're going to be Bridgewater. Some could be Halifax, but probably from the acute care system. The provincial Department of Health and Seniors and Long-Term Care manage that. We actually don't have any say in it.
Yeah.
With regards to the whole site, you mentioned demolition, and I was wondering if you have timelines for that and.
The first step will be to secure the site and then decommission the building just so it's safe and kept safe. That may include us coming to you to speak with you a bit. We may have to fence depending on our collective sense of the need to secure the site. The department then has to formally tell us they had no alternative use for it. Then we would go about retaining a contractor to dispose of it safely.
And I'm just trying to think about residents and the summer and wondering what kind of activities going on there.
Probably wouldn't have, yes, sorry, thank you. I understand your question a little better now. It's not likely that we would do that during the summer months. It would, just government doesn't move that quickly. So my guess is it's probably the fall. I think the reality is we wouldn't want to do that to you in the middle of summer anyway. So probably fall.
And we'll have a lot going on too.
That's helpful. I know some of your neighbors, people I know, and they'll be asking me that question on the street, so I'd rather have some, I guess, answers for them to ask. Any other questions?
Just as a member of the fire department, I've been through the facility. I'm looking forward to seeing it now that it's closer to completion. When I was there, I always picked up my room, so. And no, just looking forward to it, and as you are aware, we've just acquired a new aerial device that will certainly help with our providing of services to the nursing.
Yes, we're hoping you're gonna come and run some drills at our place with your new vehicle.
Well, once it's in service.
Yes, and by all means, anybody who wishes to come for a tour, we'll be happy to accommodate.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Graham.
Always nice to see you.
Enjoy your time,
too.
Mayor.
Thank you for coming.
Great. Moving on to correspondence. But it's one.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Very best, everyone.
Bye.
You're so you all really get in.
Thank
Look forward to it.
I do have a question about the first item of correspondence, from Minister John Moore and Timothy Holman about the Coastal Protection Act, and I would just like to get a sense of whether the town could respond to the letter. If we have a position, whether we just accept the information or whether we would like to comment on it. I think it might be a good idea to comment on it, but I don't know how others around the table feel about it.
Would it be,
Thoughts?
I was looking. Would it be possible for a discussion to take place with your committee on climate change? And come back with
the
recommendation to council?
Would that be an appropriate channel?
CEO and then Councillor Finn.
I guess Joe and I were probably gonna say the same, I'm guessing we might have been gonna say the same thing. So council obviously did have a discussion fairly recently, a couple meetings ago, about a piece of correspondence on the Coastal Protection Act that we didn't receive early and we didn't get a chance to sign on to, and then when we had the conversation, didn't sign on to. So I've kind of taken our discussion on that to establish a bit of a position on the part of this council as far as the Coastal Protection Act, that we were not particularly concerned with its enactment. So I guess I just, wanted to offer for consistency. I do think that not responding to this would be consistent with our traditional response to the Coastal Protection Act. Now, that's not to say council can't take a different position now.
So, just to refresh your memory, we did have a conversation on a similar piece of correspondence, advocating for the act, a month ago. We had a kind of a lengthy conversation. I guess at this point, the NSFM, as the advocate for the 49 municipal units, has an opinion. I think opinions vary. I think our position on it was that our town would be one of the communities that would be most negatively impacted by some of the unintended consequences driven by the act as originally was proposed. So I know through the jigs and the reels, there have been a number of amendments since we were asked to review it and to provide formal feedback on it. But we did review it and we did provide formal feedback on it. And our conclusion was that we were worried about a number of the elements. And so we did our job and let it go, and the province has had a change of opinion. And at this point, I think we probably dodged a bullet. And I think almost every other municipality, with the exception of Modal, is of the same opinion. So we'll see what happens. But I think that the letter this week or last week from NSFM would give advocates an opportunity to have some hope. And I would just let it go. And we'll wait to see what comes out of NSFM. Apparently, there is a process for they're going to debate it. So anyway, those are just a few thoughts.
Any other thoughts? I guess if there's a motion, we would vote on the motion. If there's an interest to do that.
I'm not making the motion.
Okay. Mayor, any questions, comments?
I mean, I'm inclined to agree with both the CAO and Councillor Feeney that the letter that we had written to the government addressed the town's position towards the Coastal Protection Act, did express some reservations that we have, and I'm not sure if we would achieve anything by now changing our approach, especially as was just mentioned, that a lot of the municipalities in the province seem to be of the same mind. So we're not that far off the accepted track. So I would be inclined to let it go for the time being until this pans out.
Okay.
The motion to
Motion
accept
to
and receive.
accept this, yeah. Motion moved by Councillor Now. To receive and file.
Oh, but so discussion, Leslie is here.
Seconded by.
No, we're not to that one yet.
Wait, I'm trying to finish off with 5.1. Motion to receive and file that one.
that,
Fair enough.
just that one.
Yeah.
Oh, not the
Just that
whole,
one.
okay.
Just that.
Seconded by Councillor. By Councillor Wilson on the question. All in favor? Receive and file. Mayor?
I must have missed something somewhere.
Oh, we're just receiving the file.
Receiving and file. 5.1.
Receiving and file, yes, please.
Motion's carried. 5.2, Councillor Kaba, you had a question on that?
Oh, well, I don't have a question, but I see that Leslie is here and wondered if she was gonna speak to it or.
I'm here to, if you would like anything, I'm happy to take any questions. This was provided and so, would you like to come up? Sure. So I'm available to answer any questions that may be here and would you like me to just.
So before you say anything, I'll let the CEO introduce it.
Certainly.
I was just reaching out to Councillor Kaba because she'd already gone there, so the CEO can introduce it, at least the public will know what it's all about, and then we'll move on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a slightly unusual piece of correspondence. Obviously, they're not usually accompanied by somebody that asks questions, but this is how we usually do requests for budget approvals from our intermunicipal associations, and in this case, Municipal Joint Services Board. So the budget's presented in the package. I didn't ask Leslie to present it. I don't think that's an expectation tonight, but if anybody has questions, she's available to answer them. And obviously the request is clear, is for our approval.
Okay. So Councillor Kaba, no particular question. I have a question, if you don't have a particular question. I don't know what my concern with the budget, not as overall, but the portion of the budget that Town of Mahone Bay covers.
Yes.
And I think I mentioned it last time we had a conversation before, is that we're paying a lot of money for IT services.
Yes.
And as a unit that's very, very small, I'm still concerned that that's quite a significant budget item, and wondering whether as a system, you might find efficiencies for us paying that much going forward.
That's a great question. Thank you. And I can speak to that a bit. So there are really two major components of the IT budget, the direct costs and the indirect costs. So indirect costs are things like wages or office space rental or those kinds of things. And I can say that actually year over year, the indirect costs have actually gone down. So it's resulting in about an 11% decrease in costs for the Town of Mahone Bay. So we are doing everything we can to do cost containment and cost control. And we have also adjusted, the board has approved a change in the cost allocation model. And that's one of the things we came and talked about before. And that's one of the things I did want to mention if you were interested, which is that further to the board approving the change in the cost allocation model, that is part of the MJSB agreement review. And that will be coming back to all three of the councils for review and hopefully approval later this spring. So that changes it to be based on the user count calculation. So it's more purely related to your usage of the service. So I think that that's an improvement as well. There are some direct costs that are increasing, but those are one-time things due to some mandatory end-of-life equipment replacement. And those will kind of have peaks and valleys through the years. But those are really the major components there. The other big thing that is happening that is moving towards what Mahone Bay had
expressed interest in, is that that's the way, what I just described is the way that we're budgeting, but in the way you'll be actually billed is going to be removing any individual municipalities' project costs. So, for example, Bridgewater has a very large project that they are going to be probably using like a half of one of the 5 resources full-time for. So that will be billed directly to Town of Bridgewater. If Town of Mahone Bay wants to have any independent projects, then the same would apply. So it's more towards a user pay basis. So that's a new component that we're putting in place for the first time in the new cost allocation model. So I think it gets closer to the model that the Town of Mahone Bay gave us feedback that you were interested in. And we don't have any like large, unique Mahone Bay projects budgeted. So, you know, that doesn't mean you're not party to all the infrastructure upgrade projects and all those things, but you're just paying your share of those. So, you know, we're certainly listening and trying to be responsive to what we're hearing and bring that forward in that way.
Could just add to that, I guess it's sort of a question for Leslie, but you could confirm the share of direct costs, share of indirect costs rather, 13%. You talked about changes coming.
Yes.
But this is still the same basis as we used last year.
It is, but we're going to set the rate for, that was used, but it wasn't done on a, it wasn't in an approved model. And we're using that just for budget setting purposes, Dylan, but the billing will actually be removing any direct project costs before we do that allocation.
So even for 2024 actual?
100% for 24-25 actuals. So if Bridgewater turns out to use half of one of those people, that's 20% of our total wage budget, then we'll remove any of those costs. And then the remainder will be split by user count allocation basis. So it will, I mean, it gets closer to a full usage-based service. Yes, yeah. So.
And then in terms of the direct costs, really that's equipment purchase. And the big driver for this year, obviously, for all the units that it hits us hardest is the laptops for the new council.
Right, right.
So just where we have an election, there's 7 new employees being onboarded all at once. That's far more than we would normally expect. That's the
Yeah.
council turnover. Now, obviously, if not all the council members turn over, people, you know, would still be here. We normally still issue laptops on that same basis, because if your laptop has survived since your last election, it probably is in need of a replacement. So
Yeah.
most of the direct cost spike that you see this year is really, it's that.
Right, yeah, that's right. And there's some network equipment replacements that are one time too, Dylan, but yes, that's a significant piece of it.
Yeah, we didn't include in here direct costs associated with wiring upgrades to the water treatment facility, which will be included in the budget, in our budget. So they will assist, but it's in our budget, not in their budget.
I think Deputy Mayor kind of thematically, like, this is a really important organization for our town, and the collaboration that we share with Bridgewater and Modal has really worked well here. And obviously we have other examples of that for our town, but this one is working really well. Costs are going up clearly, which is no surprise given that a lot of these costs are things that are outside of our control, like long haul trucking and shipping. And Leslie and her team are constantly being, you know, juggling new contracts from large players with very few competitors. So like we're trying to procure services from industries that don't have, there are very few players in the industry, and they can really, you know, they can really charge what they want to charge, and we're forced to, you know, at large part to take it. But overall, and I think the mayor certainly would be well aware of this, as well as Councillor Carver, who's been on the committee. You know, we benefit. We don't see those costs really rippling through to impacting the town on Blue Bag and Black Bag Day every Wednesday. Really, thank God that we're in the partnership, so that the private sector's historically high use of the facility is subsidizing the rest of our pickup. And every once in a while, I think Leslie makes the point that there's a big storm and a lot of bad things happen. But one of the things that happens is people take their refuge and their C&D construction material to the dump. So I was thinking about you and Ramsey Duff was talking about tearing down the old, and what a good day that
We see dollar
is.
signs.
So there you
Yeah.
go.
No, it's true. More than half the revenue we get is not from the partner municipalities.
Right.
It's from the public sector, so.
And
Billable waste.
And it always hasn't been that way. And we have this discussion once a month about how the business has changed. And the business is really, sure, it's about us and it's about picking up the garbage on Wednesday, but it's really about helping the private sector and people who go to deliver their garbage on Saturday mornings in the back of their pickup truck. So anyway, it's an incredibly well-run business, Leslie. So we appreciate everything you do.
It's getting busier.
Yeah.
It's funny to see the spring come and everybody's just coming in droves. It's neat to see the busy season come.
The one other thing is like under the theme of good karma. So the Joint Services Board bought 100 acres of land last year adjacent to the facility. And it was a collaboration, and the strength of the Joint Services Board's financial wherewithal allowed them to make that purchase, which has been publicly disclosed. And it was done for all of the right reasons. And I think they found this year, Leslie, they have some very exotic and incredibly unusual trees that are there that make the land like.
Well, it's kind of
requires a
protected
land.
wetlands,
Yeah.
basically, which of course the effluent from the waste site runs through, but where you just don't go with that conversation. Yeah, no, the land, like for 100 meters out from the edge of the wetland, it can't be disturbed. Yeah, so anyway, that's actually very good for the site.
Better be lucky than talented.
Yes,
that's for sure.
yeah. Could I just make one other little plug, which is one really great thing that I'm excited about in the budget, which is good for all of our municipalities, including the operation that I run on your behalf, which is that we now will have an occupational health and safety specialist on staff. So for Mahone Bay, for the princely sum of $8,519, you will have access to that resource starting October 1st. And so that's a really great resource that we don't have. There's a lot about risk mitigation and you know, helping us with even hopefully future like reduction in WCB claims and all kinds of these types of things, right? That resource will be able to assist with. So you know, that's a new service that all the parties have you know, agreed to. I know Mahone Bay on December 12th last year approved that as well. But I think that's a great growth thing to have a new service such as that, which is gonna, you know, really be important for all the staff in all the organizations to, you know, have that support to all the local joint occupational health and safety committees and ensure that we have programs in place for all units and, you know, just have that local advice for a really modest fee. I think that's modest from a Mahone Bay.
Well, when that conversation started, we have a role in our safety program that needs somebody outside to fill it essentially. And when that conversation started, we were looking at contracted options, none of which would give us the ability to coordinate and share lessons with our adjacent units the way that this would. And that seems very reasonable compared to what we were looking at, so.
Yeah, so. Anyway.
Thank you.
Is there a motion attached to this?
It's the very first line in the report.
No, I looked at the bottom.
Yeah, I know, we're used to scrolling to the bottom, you guys put it at the top, so, yeah. I make them at least look through the report.
Okay. Yeah, we try to make it easy.
So can I make that motion, Your Worship?
Yes.
To approve 24-25 operating and capital budget as presented?
Second that, right?
This was Joint Services Board?
Councilor Payne, seconds. One question. All in favor? Motion is approved. Thank you.
You need to change your stationery to our new logo.
We've been back and forth with you folks all day today, and I don't know, we didn't get this straight, sorry.
Actually, well, we only got the official logo package today.
Oh,
The
really?
final versions of everything. So we've been kind of holding off except for some of our own stationery so we're sending it out now to everybody.
Okay.
And we sent this, to be fair, we sent this back on February 9th. So it may have been the correct logo. at
Oh,
that time.
February 9th it was then.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was.
There we go. So we're maybe not too far off, but we will adjust accordingly.
And I just,
It's not
are
the
they
triangle logo, it's
permanently
the old
in
one.
The new occupational health and safety?
No, the technical, technician for.
It's working its way
Yeah,
through all
okay.
the temporary.
IT, yes, they're permanently now in the building that they'll be in, cause they
No.
moved so much.
No. So, well, we don't know what the future will hold.
I
Sorry.
appreciate it.
Oh.
I really appreciate
But
it.
that's, I can answer it separately. if you-
Yes,
Okay,
really
I can
appreciate it.
provide a response to you by email. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, staff reports, 6.1, staff report to council.
So as the deputy mayor noted, forgot to update the logo on this template. So other than that, if there are any questions about the report to council, this is the short version. So happy to speak to anything. To be honest, I don't think there's much new this time around.
Deputy Mayor, I'd move that we accept the report to council for March 12th, 2024 for information.
We, on this side, I'll get somebody to, I guess, second the motion. I have a couple of questions.
Fair enough.
I'll second one.
Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Well, I just had questions around item 1 and item 4. Just in terms of updates. I don't want to go there. Yeah, so item 1, basically my question, I guess, comment was around, we now have feedback around some municipal units not getting these findings, some municipal units getting it. The way the notes say here, for me, it's sort of it's a different conversation liaising with our neighbors on, I guess, coordination around our bylaws and stuff, and the HAF applications, and sort of wondering.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think we'll ever really satisfy the wording of this. I mean, like, we did reach out, Ian and I met with Jeff about the planning strategy when we were going through the consultative process last year as part of Plan Mahone Bay. And as it notes there, we did receive input, but it was very minimal and not focused on housing development. So like at that point, both units agreed that if we had anything else to say about housing that we could collaborate on, we would be waiting for the HAF applications. And you might remember through the mayor's wardens, we had a couple of times we raised opportunities for housing coordination. So I don't currently believe there are any particular opportunities for housing coordination, regulatory or otherwise with MODL. In that sense, I would only now circle back around because we have previously said we'd all wait for HAF. Neither of us received it. I expect that means that we're probably kind of at a bit of a dead end as far as this motion went. So if council's inclined to just say, I can strike it off, I'm happy to do that. But at this point, unless there's some specific direction as to what I should follow with MODL, I think we've kind of run out of ideas as far as collaborating with MODL on housing.
Just to clarify, so nobody in Lunenburg County received funding?
No, Town of Lunenburg did,
Okay,
yeah.
and Chester's did.
Okay.
Did
And
Logan apply?
I don't know for sure that Modal applied. I know that the other units in the county didn't receive funding. I know that Bridgewater and Mahone Bay applied and didn't receive funding. I actually don't know for sure that MODL did apply. I would expect they did, but yeah, so essentially we're all wondering why Lunenburg got theirs, I guess, but grappling with what to do next, and that's a separate item on tonight's agenda.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful.
Oh, I just want to speak to the
housing.
staff report.
So something else on there. Did you want to talk about number
Well,
4?
we're still on this one. Do we need a motion to strike it off? Because it was a motion that got it there in the first place.
I mean, I think we did initiate discussion, so I'm happy
So
to
it's
just
done.
mark this as done. I
Okay,
just,
done.
I usually keep them open
Yeah,
until
yeah,
something
yeah,
meaningful
okay.
comes from it, so we don't forget we had the direction, but. And then you want to do your
Yeah,
other
I wanted to
question?
do 4. And 4 is similar in nature, I guess, to my question around that piece. And I'm wondering, whether there's any substantive progress in any of that conversation and where more those are.
It's always good to ask. So this one is interesting because the motion actually said Mater's Cove or Blockhouse.
Yeah.
And we neglected to mention, I don't know what you want to call it, Oakland, Cuddy Bridge, or Clearland even to that extent. But essentially MODL has indicated that they are interested if we ever are working on lines to any of our boundaries. Currently, the town only has one service line to any of our boundaries, which is the water line going to Blockhouse. And that water line is, I guess you could say, substantially inadequate to provide additional services. So when we started scoping the major project on Main Street that we're currently in the engineering stage on, we had included in there the possibility of upgrading that line out towards Blockhouse. And at this point, the engineers are probably just about, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks away from their designs being far enough along to give us a sense of whether the council would want to include that within the scope of the project. And I think, you know, we had said to MODL that if we did include an upgrade of that line to the town boundary, we would reach out to them and look at the possibility of adding to that whatever would be necessary to provide services further down the hill into Blockhouse. But I think council first will need to contemplate, and this is a really unfortunate characteristic of external funding, if the scope of work should be reduced to suit the available funds, or if we are prepared to exceed the cost sharing formula that we received. Because unfortunately, and this happened when we did the Pleasant Street work back in 2017, before my time, you typically end up with a higher cost by the time you get to market. And then you might cut an element, and the only element we can cut in this case is the upgrade of the line that would go out towards Blockhouse. So I'm not prepared to have the conversation at the next level with MODL where they would actually incur a change order from our engineers to do the necessary work to put a cost on upgrades to Sir Blockhouse if the council is not absolutely confirmed to be including that scope of work. So I think it's just like 2 or 3 weeks away. I'm really hoping it will be in time for budget. I know they're working hard on it now. Stormwater is the last piece that they're just putting the final touches on. So, but yeah, that's essentially the status. So we'll know by April if we're in a position to reach out to MODL to say, would you be interested? And if council decides that we can't proceed at all without MODL, we might still reach out to them and say, like, if you're willing to do this, then, you know, that's essentially where we are now. I will also mention we have another project on the books now that could see extension of services to the Clearland Oakland direction. And I guess I would say I would still think that if we do extend water or wastewater to any boundary, we would take the opportunity to reach out to MODL to see if there's an interest. And that wasn't included in the original motion. But. So I think it's just a matter of course now if we're doing an upgrade to the boundary, but I don't want to sort of rope MODL into something that, you know, we might not be prepared to commit to.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess the last one was number 9. And that was around the solar that is up and running. We talked about facilities and tours. I haven't had any being done. I was wondering whether that's dead in the water or.
No. Interpretive panels being worked on, little final touches and things for safety are still being done. This weather condition has not been great for putting some of the final touches on, so I think we're probably looking at another month or so as hopefully we get over this extreme rain before we really want to get tours in there. Some of you may remember on the last visit from our MLA, the water, I don't know who was all there, David was there. The roadway around the back of the facility was so waterlogged that we couldn't walk down it as part of the tour. And that's still an issue. So those kind of little details will be worked out in the next couple of weeks, but the weather hasn't been super cooperative.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Lewis-Brock?
No, I'm fine. I'm further down.
Okay. Any questions on the report?
So did you have any other questions on this report?
Question on the report?
Well, just, not on that,
Not
but,
on that report.
I have the other staff reports below that I have a question.
Okay, well, we'll,
Yeah, so motion to receive for information?
I think it's on the table.
On the table.
We're just ready to vote.
Oh, moved and seconded, sorry, on the question, All in favor, motion is carried. Seconded. 6.2, housing auxiliary fund update. CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is what we alluded to a minute ago, unfortunate news on the Housing Accelerator. Eric and I have had 2 follow-up meetings with CMHC, but I don't think we can really add a lot of detail to the rationale around this rejection. They just said it was an extremely competitive program. And it seems like they awarded less small communities with the funding. And as I read that, it might be a little bit of a misunderstanding of Nova Scotia's municipal structures, because I think they were trying to channel money to urban areas. But in Nova Scotia, the larger municipalities are the ones that have no urban areas. So Chester got funding, Bridgewater didn't get funding. I'm not sure that was the intent of the program, but anyway, so now we're essentially having a conversation with them about components of our ask of our housing accelerator application and how those could be individually carried forward. And I think at this point, we're really identifying funding from CMHC as specific to a specific housing proposal. So if the town has a piece of property, if we have a specific housing proposal, feasibility work, various studies and plans, and potentially infrastructure upgrades are still things that can be supported by CMHC. And I guess they're particularly stressing doing that in partnership with, whoever is committing to the development of housing. So I will say this as a direct application to the efforts of our cooperative housing group, who recently presented to the council. And I did, where this appeared on our agenda, I did get some outreach from them, knowing that we were talking about this tonight, to say that it was their understanding, and it's also been confirmed on our end with CMHC, that there's a willingness to fund initiatives around the town's Hawthorne Road property, if that's something that we wanted to move forward with that organization. Now, whether there's a willingness to fund it if we were moving forward with a different partner, I think there possibly is, but they're the partner that has approached us. And essentially the type of commitment that would be needed to underlie some kind of joint application for funding, like would support our level 2 environmental assessment, topographical survey, and geotechnical testing, all things the town is intended to carry out, would be something like the proposed MOU that was referenced a couple of meetings ago. And then if we went to CMHC with that, those things that we wanted to fund would probably be fundable. And then if they point to development, then that likely CMHC could support that as well. So there is still an avenue, but it would essentially be around specific partnerships for specific properties. And as far as housing strategy development, there isn't any more general funding out there for that piece. And I guess I will add that, Eric and I have talked about that, and our original intention with Housing Accelerator was to hire a person last fall who would work on the housing strategy throughout this last few months and present something before the end of your term. At this point, we don't feel that it's realistic. So the recommendation here is the council consider the items. I've now kind of run through the items. We didn't give you a specific motion. You can just move to accept the report for information, but if there is any particular aspect that we want to action, like with respect to the Hawthorne Road property or anything else, I think it is in order to provide direction.
Council.
Oh, okay. You were looking over that way. Would you give us regular updates on how you progress with those conversations?
Well, I'm basically at a point where I wouldn't have any progression unless the council is interested in making some kind of commitment to move forward with the housing cooperative, or otherwise with any of our components on the land ourselves independently.
Oh.
Like I could immediately get that level 2 environmental assessment and topographical stuff underway, or we could apply for funding with the co-op group and get it underway. It was about $65,000, I think, probably all told.
You have a follow-up?
Well, we're pretty well stalled in this area.
But no, I just need direction. Either we do it ourselves or we do it with them and get cost sharing. Those are the 2 options, I think. Or we don't do anything. I mean, that's obviously still an option.
Councillor Wilson, and then.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand this. So what you're asking us to do is to give some direction with regard to the rest of the environmental and other studies on the Hawthorne Hill property, and make application to CMHC in that regard for
Either we proceed on our own to get that stuff done at our own cost, or we can go to CMHC with the housing cooperative and get their funding to do it. I think those are our two options as I understand them.
To get their funding?
CMHC could fund the $65,000 of work, but they would do it because there was a project. And so the project
see.
is
Okay.
what the cooperative would be bringing to.
So we wouldn't get it without-
I don't think we would get it with it. Now, if we had a different partner, I think that would be, I'm not saying it has to be that partner.
Councillor Feely?
So we've talked about the requirement for the study to tell us, inform us about how much money will be required for remediation. And so those, as I understand it, the study alone was gonna be $65,000 and the remediation is going to be more than that, to be determined by the study. Regardless of what the inevitable cost of the remediation will be, whether it's a big number or a small number, it's an unknown number now. And it would be worthwhile knowing, because there's this expectation that that extended piece of property is developable, or we're in a position to be able to do something with it, respond to an MOU, or provide some organization or some builder with the opportunity to develop it. And we couldn't, but no one knows that, because we know that there's limitations on our ability to choose different strategies, because we don't have the information that we need from the study. So I've always thought that the study was worthwhile. But Dylan, your success at securing subsidies to offload that burden on the tax base is, proven time and time again. I'd like to see the study done. It's not a super high priority, to be honest. Like, we have lots of things to spend the money on, but in the context of having the information for the next council having the information, because this is a multi-year issue to be through the jigs and the reels, I do think it's worthwhile pursuing it by whatever avenue we can get it done. So if this is an avenue that can actually get the funding, we're a long, long way from a building ever being erected on that property, considering it's March 2024, maybe March 2028, maybe we'll be there, but we've got a lot to do before that. So, why, if there's a mechanism or strategy that can get the funding supported, I would like to see that proceed.
Councillor Calvo, then Councillor Now.
So just trying to clarify what Councillor Feely is saying, getting the funding from CMHC is contingent on applying with a partner. In this case, the partner being the co-op.
Yeah, in this case, because that's who's approached us about a partnership.
And that would be a commitment to the co-op.
Well, I think, yes, I think the way
Yeah,
that
okay.
the way that it's been phrased is like it's an investigative commitment. It's not a commitment that housing will be developed. But I think it's a commitment that the town's intention is to use this piece of property for housing development, which I think at this point, we're pretty far along to saying, but council hasn't really said its current use is obviously municipal purpose, so.
And the.
But you
if
see,
the
I mean, she
housing
wouldn't want to
if
fund a
if
study if
housing-
it wasn't.
If it does come to housing, that it would be the co-op who would develop it.
I'll have to look back on the wording of that MOU. I don't know that that's what it said, and I don't think that would be required for CMHC.
Okay.
But I think if the town were to get funding from what is essentially the Canada Housing Corporation, and we just used it to figure out whether the land could be used for like a commercial use or public works use, then they would feel like that was not the purpose of the funding. So I think there's a way to skirt this where, we're not making any, and I don't think the housing co-op expects the kind of commitment where we say, like, you're gonna get 100% use of this piece of property if the studies get completed. But I think if we want to try the route where we leverage external funding, we'd have to have a follow-up where we work it out. I could meet with the co-op and CMHC and come back with something and say, like, this is what we need at a minimum. Or we can revisit the MOU as it was presented at some point, but I think, and then the other option is we just do the studies ourselves, but I think we could probably get at least 80% of the 65,000 funded in this way.
And doing that in partnership with the co-op leaves both partners, town and co-op, poised or ready, able to move forward.
Yeah, they would use this as the required early components of a feasibility study on whatever they mean to build, which would need these components to be carried out. Like at a minimum, the topo and environmental have to be cleared, and because we've done a level 1 and it's recommended a level 2, I don't think they'd be able to proceed with a level
So
2.
it's like we're both moving in parallel. I mean, if we have a joint.
And that's where the
Yeah,
MOU, I
yeah.
think, as they presented it, was intended to speak to, like, that we are both looking at this land for housing development, and I think the point about affordability is discretionary. I don't think that's a requirement in terms of the funding.
Also now,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, we go ahead with this, with the co-op. Our commitment to the co-op in regards to everything else is still the same, so if, depending on what the results say. If they say that it has to be all done up and all that type of thing, that would come back to us, or would it be a cooperation with the co-op, or?
I mean, we would both receive the documents, but it's my understanding the commitment would only be that in good faith, we would share the documents and look at the opportunity to develop housing. And I wouldn't come back to council and recommend something without being able to say either way. I just, right now, it's kind of
So by
conjecture.
doing this, we're not actually making a commitment.
I don't
to the
believe
co-op
that
in
would
any
be
way?
necessary to
Okay.
obtain the funding. But certainly if it was, I would come back and tell you guys before
any comments, questions? Mayor?
I'm just still a little curious around this discussion we've just had. And I can appreciate what the CAO is advising around working with the co-op group and an MOU with the co-op group. But if we were to submit such a proposal to CMHC and the funding was provided to do the study, the outcomes would not in any way bind the town to be a partner with the co-op in building whatever it is they decide to build. Do I understand you correctly on that?
It's my understanding it wouldn't be necessary to make a binding commitment, but obviously I'll need to come back from having the conversation with
Okay.
CMHC and give you an actual document. I'm just
But this
looking to
is
know.
not going to happen because we went to Ottawa seeking funding to see if it was a feasible project.
Yeah, so if we were going to go with a recommendation on this, I would say direct me to come back with a proposal as far as CMHC supported feasibility work on the Hawthorne Road property. And then I'll come back with the definitive answer to that question in writing, because I believe it is possible to get a funding commitment without any commitment to develop the property in a certain way other than that it be used for housing. That's my understanding is the bottom line, but I'll make sure that's in writing. I won't just go from this conversation.
And I move we direct you to do that.
Eric, is that, did you get enough of that to piece something together?
And I'm second.
Second, okay, moved by Councillor Wilson, that we provide direction to council, to CEO to work with the CMHC.
Yeah, I guess if you don't mind saying work with the CMHC and the Mahone Bay Land Cooperative. Because that way I can make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, to come with a proposal to council on moving forward on applying for funding together. Councillor Kaba? You second it?
Yes, let's second it, yeah.
On the question? All in favor, motion is carried. Thank you.
And I think we already pre-litigated the other sort of housing, the fallout from not getting this was already discussed under the report to council. The only other piece was that minimum standards piece. My assumption is with no housing strategy, that's also not moving forward at this time.
And that's the next.
Okay. Item 6.3, staff report, Marina Walk updates, CEO.
So thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a big one. A lot of stuff in here. I guess, we're approaching budget. It starts to get various recommendations coming to the surface. So we had a meeting back in October with the council and representatives from the Wooden Boat Society, and I've had a couple of follow-up meetings with the representatives since, and essentially summarized a bunch of related topics here. Happy to take questions on them. There are a series of recommendations. I think if you've gone through the report, it's basically structured with the background analysis, financial analysis, and recommendations for each of the different areas separately. So the report does present 4 recommendations. Each one is in reference to a different one of these subtopics in the report. And I understand, council may want to have further discussion on some of these, maybe not on others. So happy to take questions, happy to get Eric Wright in some motions, whatever council's will is.
Yeah. Just before I jump to you, if you don't mind, I was curious why in the recommendations, there was nothing to do with the fishing.
That's my
I
question.
figured I'd get the question.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, I presented where we think that the option is. And so if council wants to get a subsequent investigation of that specific option, then happy to throw that in the mix. I guess at this point, I'm recommending a $900,000 capital item, so I'm not sure we have an appetite for more, but yeah, absolutely. I think the appropriate thing if somebody wanted to would be to direct me to bring a report including cost estimation on the proposed floating fishing dock.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would suggest we need it, and probably all the other items would be received more favorably if that item was there, because then you're looking at everything that we've had concerns about in the past, but
Well, I think it was the most talked about
exactly.
thing that we talked about even last year at the budget meetings, about the war. And I think I felt it was a priority for us, and to not see that recommended going forward, I was very disappointed. So I would really like to see, to bring a report back.
I think we can have it in time for budget, so why don't we just get that one out of the way if you want to make the motion.
I will make the motion that we direct the staff to do a report on the costs and the positive sides of having a fishing or a floating fishing or whatever is.
So we're going with, sorry, you're in the middle of composing your motion, but we're going with estimation in relation to the floating option off the breakwater as presented here. Okay.
90
I
degrees.
just basically, without that much confirmation, there's so many, scenarios. Okay.
We have a second. Seconded by Councillor Feely. Thank you, Mayor, on the question. All in favor? Fantastic. Councillor Feely.
Just as we scroll through the number of items, I do think the idea of having the survey around the water lots makes a lot of sense. It strikes me that any of the water lot owners along the whole corridor, really maybe the entire corridor through the open shoreline protection zone. But if we were going to move along with that recommendation, I think that would be a smart thing for us to do tonight. Why wouldn't we take the opportunity to ask any owner along that corridor if they want to, go in and do it at the same time to get the scale and do surveys all along that corridor. I think there's a lot of unknowns. We talk about, I don't know, every 6 or 8 months, there seems to be some issue around the boundaries of various water lots along that area. It comes up periodically. So I think if we were going to do it, we should do it, but we should also extend the opportunity to the other adjacent water lot owners to see if they want their lot surveyed as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
I guess my only concern would be that, yeah, we make it clear that essentially the scope of our survey work is, defined.
Yeah.
And so that we don't get in a
Right.
situation where we're not able to proceed if not everybody's on board.
It just strikes me that if somebody's out there with, in a boat doing the surveying, that this is your once in a lifetime opportunity to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, if we proceed with the
That's
steps
our-
associated with storage clearing lands, we already have to look at all the adjacent properties. So while they're at it, it would be an opportunity for other surveys to be carried out.
Do you want to move that motion?
With Deputy Mayor, sorry, folks.
What was
Second one.
Second one.
Second one, I'd move that council direct staff to begin the process of obtaining a submerged Crown Lands lease for the mooring fields in areas adjacent to the breakwater.
With the addition, you had some.
As well as to extend is to work with adjacent property owners and, water lot owners, to define their, to survey their lots as well.
Can we just say the offer? Thank you for the
Yes,
opportunity
yes.
to say it
I'll
that way.
second it.
Yeah,
That's brilliant to capture it, to move.
as both Councillor Carre and Ken.
On the question,
On the
on the
question,
question.
Mr. Mayor, yeah,
are we talking about the water lots on the town side of the bay, or are we talking
Yeah.
water lots on both sides?
Uh,
I mean, I just assumed
Well,
adjacent, it's gonna be on
adjacent to
both
town,
sides.
yeah. Wherever it's logical, where you'd have, adjacent boundaries.
Abutting,
Abutting.
adjacent.
Yeah, they're not, adjacent is better, because I don't think they technically touch,
Okay.
but yeah, that's fine.
So we would offer this to people in Oakland that have water lots too, is that? what
It's
you're
their
saying?
cost, I don't know why
Well,
they're.
At their cost, yeah.
The idea is to make it worth their while for us to get a survey.
Yeah.
It's not like we're gonna we need somebody to get enough survey to make it worth their
Make it
while.
worth their while.
And the essence of the process is also that this be quite transparent, and the main stakeholders are the adjacent water lot holders, so it's just including them in the process.
So could we insert the wording at their own cost?
Of course.
Offer the opportunity for adjacent property owners to have a survey done at their own cost at the same time.
Mayor, is that satisfactory?
That would if the mover and seconder are in agreement.
Yeah, I believe they are. On the question, you have a motion on the
Oh yeah,
table.
Joe's not on camera.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
I just realized that might make it harder for David.
We have a couple, three other motions there.
I'm just gonna go with number 3, move the council approve the Mahone Bay Wooden Boat Society to install laundry facilities at the Main Street Comfort Station to be operated by the society at the sole expense of the society.
You have a second there? Seconded by Councilor Now. Questions on the motion? Mayor? Oh,
No,
ready to vote on the question? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Deputy Mayor, move that council direct staff to prepare an updated marina license and letter of agreement for consideration to the April 9th meeting. Do you want to be held to that, Dylan, or would you rather?
I think so,
Yeah, you know,
because the current one expires at the end of April, so I just would rather try to get it through.
Well, I tell you what, for consideration in April.
Seconds.
Moved by Councilor
It gives me one meeting for buffer.
Councilor Carver. On the question? All in favor? Motion is carried.
You guys, I see nobody really wanted to take the first one up, it's just the $900,000 motion. Well, I mean, I understand there's some reticence here, so I'll just briefly speak to why I'm recommending we do issue a request for proposals. I think, ultimately, there's a lot of uncertainty, despite having a cost estimate that's only about a year old. There's a lot of uncertainty about different approaches. I think when you go out, even if you say, what we're looking for is this, every marine contractor has their own take on what the best way to do this would be. So rather than going out and issuing it as a request for tender and saying, look, Pinto has given us these specs, quote on these specs, what I would recommend, this is in a lot of discussions with the society, is going out with an RFP saying, we have this report, we have these specs, we have this information. Can you give us a proposal, what you think we should do in the immediate term? And I think it's very hard for us to really have a number until we go there. And I know Joe's said this a number of times before, is, we can have the best of intentions around a number and it gives us pause. But until we really go out to the market, we don't have a test of what that will be. So I understand that we might get proposals back and feel that it is difficult to award. I guess at the end of the day, there is a level of commitment entailed in issuing an RFP. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still discretionary if we felt we couldn't proceed, if all of the proposals are untenable. If we receive an adequate proposal for under what was estimated in January of 2023, we could be fairly lucky. And I don't think there's much longer we could wait. The Boeing is visible to anybody who's down there. So at a certain point, it will be worse because the face of the wharf will collapse. I don't think it's imminent. I don't mean to scare anybody, but
Councillor Cavan?
But the amount that was estimated in 2023 is the amount that's gonna go into the budget, the draft budget.
yeah,
That's gonna go in.
that's still what I'm using.
Right, okay. But we know that there's gonna be vastly increased costs in the year.
Or a creative approach that
Or a
brings the
creative
costs down. But I think if we wait to get out to market, it's just gonna get worse.
Mhm.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I'd just like to touch you on that creative approach notion, because I remember really well when I first joined council back in the dark ages. We had a thing from an engineering firm that said this thing was in imminent danger of collapse and all vehicles had to be removed from it and on and on and on. And it was gonna cost a lot of money and nothing was done. And it's still there. And it's all full of boats now, which are a lot heavier than cars. So I just caution that engineers tend to be very careful with covering themselves every which way. And they don't really care how much it costs, as long as they're protected. So I think it's important that we write the RFP, which I think is a good idea, that we emphasize the notion of people thinking outside the proverbial box a little bit.
Question. I think my worry, my hesitance around issuing the RFP as a council that's leaving is the notion that the next council is poised to pull the trigger on the RFP when it comes to the table. And my inclination would be to let the next council figure out whether they want to take that.
I think that basically if we don't do what's recommended here and we don't issue it soon, then it would be the next council's decision. Now, we have an opportunity, I think, if we issue it in the next month or so, that the work could actually be carried out within your term. So I think I have an obligation to recommend that, but I understand the consideration.
Fair enough. Anybody wants to move the motion?
So otherwise, this just goes to budget without the request for proposals being issued. It's not like it's gone, but.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion. The council include the partial Quimberg replacement project in the, this is the right one, yes. In the 2024-25 capital budget and direct staff to issue an RFP with the intention to complete the work within the fiscal year. But noting, if I may just add this, that unique creative solutions would be encouraged.
No harm in putting it in the motion.
Do you have a second of that motion?
I'll do the honors.
Second, Councillor Feeny.
So,
Seconded by Councillor Feeny, I'd already mentioned. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Cavan.
so on the question, I'm interested in the idea of it being picked up by the next council. And if we get the request for proposals now, if we do that part, what is the harm in leaving it for the next council? I mean, it's within the 2025 fiscal year, so it could be
The way this is
in the third and
written,
fourth terms.
if we get a proposal we feel is acceptable, it will be okayed and contracted by you. If we don't get any acceptable proposals, then obviously it's just gonna continue to be something for the next council to figure out.
Right, okay.
But if this motion were to pass as written, I would say you're pretty much going to be required to consider the proposals received.
Well, we have deferred this.
20 years.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, so I think we'll know more when we get the number back. So same process we used for the bowl. Fully committed until the number comes back. That's where we have limited options or no options. So I mean, it's worthwhile for us to at least like find out what reality looks like, and then when we know what the reality looks like, we'll be able to have a special meeting and talk about it for a couple hours and figure out what to do. Whether it's going to be this group of 7 people or a different group of 7 people, who knows? But I'm not saying that it's going to be any cheaper or easier to finance, regardless of who's sitting around the table.
My only worry again is that I know it's semantics and we can always come back and say, well, we've seen the numbers and we're not doing it. But in this motion, we're actually committing to, if we get an RFP, that we're contemplating doing the work. And in reality, none of us here is contemplating doing the work. Even the mover and the second of the motion. So I'm like, why do we want to do that?
I wouldn't want to talk so much about my thoughts that would actually impact the response we get from the RFP. But what I would say is that there are financial and fiscal limits to these investments. That being said, these are long-lived assets. Like I'm assuming out of the various scenarios we looked at, this is still a 20-year repair, I believe. It gives you that kind of life. I think that was the note, that if we do this kind of investment, it would extend the life of the wharf by 20 years. Like that would be the expectation. Is that a reasonable
Yeah,
expectation?
I'm trying to remember what the Pinot board said. I think they may have said that it was 10 to 15, but as was noted by a member of council here, engineers are very cautious. So I imagine that 20 is probably a pretty safe estimate. This is the only condition issue noted with the wharf, which is actually kind of remarkable, to be honest, because with the age of the facility, the federal government gave these away for a reason. Like they're fully depreciated.
Do we, the last time we met with the Marina Association, there was a conversation about, the economic impact of the marina, which I think we all acknowledge is high, both from a tourist perspective and direct. I'm just kind of curious if there's any way for us to dimension, or do we have any information that really talks about the economic impact of the wharf to the town? It's got to be a big number. And I really think that number would be, if we're having a conversation about let's call it $1 million investment, it really needs to be supported by some pillar of economic benefit. And that information's either out there, or maybe we should, figure out a way to have the Marina Society commission that study. But I think having that study at a similar time to the receipt of the information from this RFP would give everyone the comfort of knowing that there would be a strong economic justification for the wharf beyond the benefit to the marina and those participants. So it would be nice to have that information.
Yeah, those economic impact assessments, like the formal ones you would carry out, they're fairly expensive. I think we're probably talking $20,000 or $30,000. Otherwise, I'm sure that the society would be happy. They usually come towards the end of the year anyway. We're considering the renewal of licenses and agreements. I'm sure they would be happy to come and speak on the subject of economic impacts to the extent they're able to speak to them. But I agree, there's certainly economic impacts of the wharf. And we don't have hard numbers to sort of back that up.
Do we feel we're ready to vote on the motion on the table?
Call for the question.
The question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Oh, next.
Next one,
We finished all four. Yeah, we did 5 of the 4. So we're good, yeah.
So 6.4 hedgerow, report on hedgerow.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this one is part of what I would say my responsibilities as the traffic authority. We had a lot of different follow-up pieces coming out of the new planning strategy and land use bylaw, and I just wanted to make sure that this one was officially on the radar. At this point, obviously, there isn't an imminent change, but we did rezone properties on Hedgerow, and there's some action now with respect to subdivision and consolidation of those properties going on. So reason to expect that there will be more traffic on Hedgerow in the future. So the recommendation is offered in that respect. I did also note, and we don't need any action from council for, that the staff would be working to add no parking signage in certain areas in the downtown as a consequence of anticipated people looking for parking when the businesses are no longer required to offer it. So that part, the no parking on Hedgerow, is something that Jonathan and I will take care of in the spring. But as far as the recommendation, happy to answer any questions, or take any direction.
So there's been, I guess, questions and emails around this, and I'm assuming we're ready for a motion.
I'm of the opinion that a motion as recommended this evening isn't what we want to do, and I think we prefer to defer the item until we have a little more time for thoughtful contemplation. Would recommend, I know, I'm not sure if it would be if we can get some consensus around the table about what the right vehicle to have that discussion is, if it's at a strategy and planning meeting, or if we should just, for the time being, defer it to a later date. I don't think there's anything immediately pressing that requires a decision this evening. And just in context, when we did have the community group come together and talk to us about the advocacy for Cherry Lane becoming one way, it was almost a full 2 years or more before it actually happened. So it was a long, slow process of really the art of persuasion, and the process took a little bit longer. So I think I'd have a hard time moving forward tonight. So I think I'd recommend that we defer the item, Deputy Mayor. I think that's the motion.
Definitely.
So yeah, usually if you're gonna defer, you gotta specify when it's deferred until.
Well, as a council, would we like to have a conversation about this? Though I think there's lots of positive, there's a lot of merit that we all can see in aspects of the motion. It just needs to be evaluated in the context of all of the other unintended consequences and the timing.
Well, I would like to suggest that we, as we defy it to a particular time, but also maybe direct staff to do what I felt was might have been lacking in the report was any consultation with the folks who will be impacted to get a sense of what their thoughts are or might be before we I guess spoke up honest notes, so to speak. Would that be something that you'd consider in your motion? Maybe
for staff to engage with the I think there's a triggering event.
Yeah.
There's a triggering event and whether that triggering event, i.e. a large development on Hawthorne behind Bill Store, occurs or not. And in the absence of knowing if that triggering event is going to happen this decade or next decade, I mean, it's just not crystal clear to me that this decision needs a timely decision by this council tonight. So I prefer to wait until we have more visibility on that triggering event, and then there's a number of other considerations about extending the one-way street all the way to Pond, and there was some other commentary as well. So
before I go to the CEO, I thought from my perspective, I mean, I know the way the report was crafted was that's a triggering event, but generally from my perspective, it might make sense to do that anyways. But I'll let the CEO maybe comment on that.
So, I mean, all I was gonna say is that in terms of procedure, you could do a motion to, like, this is, now we have our list of every motion we make, and we just talked earlier this meeting about one that was from 4 years ago, so there's certainly no reason why council can't defer until, like, whatever triggering event is said in the motion were to take place. In this case, Councillor Feeding, I think the easiest way to reference what you're describing would be the council defer the recommendation of the traffic authority until a development proposal is received on Hedgerow. That's a simple enough thing to go by. But I guess as far as the points about engagement that were raised, well, in the interim, I'm a little concerned about the precedent to take this type of recommendation out for, I guess, opinion. Like, I certainly think residents should be informed of the potential for a change, which is part of why I put it on the motion tonight, on the agenda tonight, to make sure people would know about it before, as Joe said, 2 years from now, maybe we did it. But I don't know that we want to ask people, do you think that we should do something that, like, any engineer would long since have recommended we do? At least it wouldn't be my opinion that it's wise to let that be determined by public opinion. But obviously that's council's prerogative.
Councillor Carver and then Councillor No.
Well, because had already been thinking about if we did defer until a triggering event, why not, in the meantime, have some conversations with people who might be affected, most affected. And when I look at this proposal, I can think of all sorts of repercussions that we won't be happy with in terms of traffic flow. And maybe in the same way that earlier we were talking about creative solutions that aren't immediately apparent, that conversations in the community might generate some solutions that we aren't aware of at the moment. So I would certainly be in favor of having some community conversations before a triggering event, so that if the triggering event happens, we already have some information.
Councillor Now, and then Councillor Peter.
Yeah, CAO, you had mentioned, I think, in your pre-up to this, about subdividing plans. Is there a process now going on, subdividing some plans in that area?
We normally get inquiries from our development services around subdivision requests. And one of the ones that came up was that if we receive ministerial assent on the new planning strategy, which we actually just received today, excitingly, then there were subdivision requests that were pending. So I don't have any information and I couldn't share
I'm
it.
just wondering whether those would impact this, but I'm certainly in favor of putting this off until we do get something that will, more or less force our hand onto making this one way.
Final point, as we struggle for a motion, to try to figure out what the right motion should be. So I really think it's in our interest to make sure we have a clean delineation between any potential development and a decision around traffic flow. I think they may obviously they're inextricably linked or not. I just want to make sure it's absolutely clear to everybody around the table and to the community that we're not making any linkage. There are no promises made to any developer. Like you saw the land use bylaw is approved now, and you take your chances with the benefits and privileges in it, and also the deficiencies and the limitations. If the plan warrants the traffic flow change, reasonable people are going to agree and see that. I have no doubt, and I think there's a lot of merits on one way on hedgerow as a one way. I just don't think that there's a lot of merit having that discussion tonight. So what do you think about do we want, I think it does make sense to have a vote tonight on this topic, then we should defer it. Well, what do you all think?
I think we folks agree on the deferring. I think the question is when and how long.
May I ask Councillor Now a question?
Yes.
How do fire trucks go down the hedgerow? Do you do it on a regular basis, or?
No, we haven't had a whole lot of call there. We've had some.
And the new,
And we just go whichever way.
the new truck, I mean, it maneuvers and to.
Yeah, they've had on most of the streets in the whole day.
Okay.
But, as far as that one goes, I don't think it's any different than a lot of the other streets. The trucks are big, they take a lot of room.
So
And, some of the streets we know are,
oncoming traffic
narrow.
reverses?
they would pull over as much as they can, so you can get by. On the other hand, there's not a fantastic amount of traffic on Edge Road most of the time.
Yeah.
So that we don't really run into the problem, not saying we won't.
Well, and people tend to defer to a fire vehicle, so you'll probably have more respect than other people who are, run into somebody.
So one reason not to have conversations before a triggering event would be that it might give the impression of promises.
Exactly.
I guess it's interesting to say, if I could just speak to that, I really meant the exact opposite here. We've changed the property zoning to multi-unit.
Yeah.
So now we've invited people to develop more than 8 units on that property, which to me means whatever happens, I would stand by this recommendation.
No, fair enough.
So I actually brought it forward to ensure that there was no sense that there was a linkage between this. So I just want anybody watching, the reason it's coming forward is to make it absolutely clear that this recommendation is based on our own planning strategy and not any specific application.
It's very
Yeah.
possible there'll be a development there.
But that doesn't mean that now that it's been lodged, that it can't then be deferred until we have an actual take up on the new zoning. I mean, that's what it's in relation to.
I need a motion and a second, and we can move on.
Well, we could revisit it in November.
It's been done before. Maybe give them till December anyway.
I'll move that we defer this item until the first meeting in September.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, second.
Councilor Feeney did make half a motion.
I'm gonna withdraw my motion and defer to Councillor Wilson's better motion.
Could you repeat that better motion, please?
And to defer this item until the first meeting in September for our consideration.
Do you have a second? Seconded by
Thank
Councillor
you,
Feeney.
thank you, Kelly.
Pleasure.
We'll see if anything's changed.
Yeah, fair enough.
And the question, all in favor? Motion's carried.
One thing that will have changed is the nomination rules.
Yeah, what else can we defer?
Yeah, but you didn't defer it past the election.
Okay, accessibility audit reports, 6.5.
So I hope everybody had time to read 400 pages. It's quite thorough.
Yeah.
And obviously the cost estimates are daunting, but you know, they're not presented with any expectation that we take up on every possible improvement. So I presented these now to give council at least a month before the budget. Staff will likely pick some of these as things that we would like to talk more about. But if there's things in here that catch your interest, you have questions, you don't have to have them tonight. You're welcome to have them tonight if you've already gotten through all of it. But I just wanted to make sure you had some time with this massive amount of information. And then the report reiterates the connections between these audits and the commitments that we have made through the Limerick County Accessibility Plan and our own local implementation plan, which is to carry out these audits and then consider the recommendations that have been provided.
So I have two questions. One is, can staff provide council with some suggested priorities or timelines? And my second question pertains to the comments that the auditors made about the track at the community sports field, and that it has not met the standards that were expected. What can the town do about that?
I'm happy to speak to both. So I guess as far as the recommendations, what I initially was planning to do is just bring this as an appendix to what our actual budget recommendations around the accessibility implementation plan for 2024-25 would be. Because if you look back on the implementation plan, there's a whole bunch of different areas, and this is just one. And staff are working to put a budget sort of, you know, here's what is in the budget for accessibility plan implementation, whether it's initiatives on the, you know, employment and hiring side of things, whether it has to do with, you know, visual and auditory services, you know, all those kind of things, or whether it's infrastructure and this type of stuff. So initially I was just gonna, you know, get to budget or the meeting before the budget and you get a report and here's what's in the budget. But given there were 400 pages, I just wanted to get this to you now. So what you're describing, it is my intention by or as a part of, I'm not quite sure what format it will take, to give a rundown of here are all the things in the accessibility implementation plan, including these, that we're actually recommending to include in the 24-25 budget. Yeah. But in the meantime, if you're interested in something, then that could help to have us putting the final touches on that report, so. Oh, yes, the track. So the track, I mean, we noted that right away, and I have mentioned that before. It was raised with the company that did the work. So they've indicated that they do acknowledge, at least verbally, that this is not what they quoted on. And it is their intention this spring, when the weather has improved, for them to come back and take a try at remediating it. Ultimately, this reflects on our ongoing relationship with this contractor. And we'll look at what they can do, but I think we should give them a chance to do that before we contemplate any other action. So that's where we are. Weather permitting, they'll be here as soon as it's reasonable, but I don't want to push them to do it before that, because that'll just be an excuse for work not being done. So I'd like them to say, the conditions are optimal, we're gonna do an excellent job. Chip seal is quite temperamental to the conditions in which it's performed. So we do need dry weather above a certain temperature for it to set properly. So that's my take on it. I mean, I understand that we don't have a lot of faith in that, but you know, at the same time, we don't have very many local contractors left. And I would hope that we can get a good quality product out of this one.
To be continued.
To be continued.
Wow, that's disappointing.
Yeah. Motion to accept.
In that case, I will move that we accept the report for information.
Moved by Councillor Now, we have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Alonis Croft. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Next one is the Regional Police Advisory Committee, 6.6.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So discussions have taken off between other units. Eric, as our CV liaison, has been plugged into those. We thought it was about time to provide a report. It's always a little tricky when there's conversations going on between the units to know what's going to come up when. And so before MODL got out in the media saying we were all doing this, which we certainly haven't agreed to, we wanted to raise it here so that you would know. And, you know, ultimately the recommendation is that we support this, but I will say we still have some questions, I think is fair. One of the biggest ones that I have is around the composition of the committee, and Eric, we haven't gotten any further information on this, eh?
No, it is in the Police Act that is the composition, so we do a joint board, there's 2 from the council and 2 from the public, so. And then plus a police staff liaison, so it could look at a committee of, I think it was 17 in the.
So that seems unwieldy, and obviously that could give us pause.
And that doesn't count any other municipal staff that might be there for, you know, individual staff resources, so we'd be looking at 21, assuming that those involved all send staff.
Well, the good mention, you'd never be able to organize a meeting.
Yeah.
Eric, you mentioned those numbers. Is it not an appointee from the government anymore?
There's just a single appointee to each board, so that's the only one that doesn't scale up in a crazy way. There'd still only be one.
There's one appointee, yeah, there's one appointee from the
Yeah,
province.
yeah, there would be.
I know,
I
okay, cause I used to serve in that position.
Councillor Calvert, thank you.
I'm curious, has there been any conversation about this with the citizen participants on our police advisory board?
I don't believe so, and
Yeah.
one of the thoughts was that we probably would want to refer this to discussion at the police advisory board. But we haven't raised it independently.
And that would be my recommendation for this, that it be sent to the committee that will actually be invited. And I don't believe it fair for us as council to make a decision yet. We have a committee that will.
Unless your decision were not to consider it. That's, you know, so that's why you come here first.
Yeah.
Is the police advisory board full now, that it's got all the volunteers it needs?
I believe so.
Yeah.
There's only
And
the 2.
that was just a lead up to the idea that the policing is such a issue of passion in the community. That it really is important to have that input.
So.
Well, I have to say, when I read this, I was surprised because I've sat on that committee for a year plus, and I was not aware of any conversation about this. So I would really recommend that we go and talk to our committee and have some input from them. I was totally surprised by it, and I've got lots of questions to, like, really, like, why are we doing this? I'm taking that to be efficient, but I mean, we've canceled meetings so many times because of lack of quorum. I'm just really, I think it'd be harder to have a quorum, and then what does this mean? We feel we're understaffed or underserviced. We hear that quite often in our area. Will this lead to somebody else having more say, or I don't know, will there be a good balance on our needs being served?
Deputy CEO?
Yeah, just as far as the conversations had, there was a conversation amongst some staff because the municipal units that we're discussing were having issues with quorum and thought that a regional approach might be a way to bring a more, I'll say, effectiveness to the police advisory board, because at that point when we had the discussion, We had had quorum for, I think, 3 meetings in a row potentially. So in that room, we were discussing, is this something that we want to explore and take to our councils for feedback? And the point of this exercise is to determine if it is something that might be more effective and efficient at a regional level, or to keep it individual. So this is the start of, there have been preliminary discussions, and this report just bring it forward to highlight those preliminary discussions, to get the guidance from council on how to further those discussions if they want to take this avenue. Or
Yeah, I don't believe any of the police advisory boards or councils have discussed this.
No.
But when it came to our attention at the staff level, we felt, well, we gotta send it up to council for exactly the reasons you guys are discussing, which is Eric shouldn't be, spending time contemplating it if we're not inclined to proceed with it.
And when you say staff, does that include staff from other municipalities or just?
Oh, no, they initiated it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we're just kind of on the receiving end. I'm pretty sure some of the other units are quite confident that there will be support at the level of the councils.
Okay.
Yeah.
included
Okay.
staff from these 4
Sure.
municipalities.
Okay.
Yeah.
So motion to send this to police advisory,
So moved.
moved by Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor Creaney. On the question, all in favor, motion is carried. Just one piece, Modo tends to move at speed, some of these things, so.
Yeah.
I would prefer that there was communication from us that this has been sent to police advisory.
Eric,
It hasn't
you'll-
been
Oh, yeah,
formally-
certainly.
It hasn't been formally accepted, because they might assume, oh.
Rubber stamp.
Yeah, we'll just rubber stamp it and.
And we've seen with MODL, they might be a press release.
Exactly, exactly, yes. Okay, thank you, folks.
Exactly.
Council items, 7.1, council now, volunteer recognition.
Yeah, I feel that, we always say how we value our volunteers and stuff like that, but except for nominating a provincial volunteer for that service, we don't do anything to recognize our volunteers. And so I'd like to make a motion that, Mahone Bay, we used to do it at one time, we had a reception or something or other for the volunteers that they could have set. So I'd like to see that reinstituted, so I'll make a motion to that effect, that we do something to recognize the volunteers in Mahone Bay.
Yeah. Moved by councillor now.
I'll second that.
Seconded by councillor Lonis Pro. On the question.
Well, it's
Councillor Carver, then the CEO.
Okay, it's a question. Has the town in the past had official events to recognize volunteers? I know there's been community organized events to recognize volunteers, but I don't recall town ones.
Mhm.
Quite a number of years now, Councillor Carver, the province organizes the Volunteer of the Year award.
No,
And
I mean
it
local.
goes off to that one, but there hasn't been one in the community to recognize all of our volunteers.
I think
I don't know if they have in the meantime, but
there used to be a local reception.
Yeah.
But as the
By the
town's
town.
direct role in it, I actually don't know. I know we were involved. I'm not sure if the bill was footed entirely by the town or, I think in most counties it was done collaboratively between more than one unit, but maybe Suzanne has a knowledge. of it.
Oh, I remember there being receptions and certificates passed out, and I remember helping the Senator Baines, as I've heard him refer to, I would say, where the town had held receptions at Tim Hortons a couple of years and had free coffee for people coming in, and I know I helped him out on occasion with those.
I've been on council since 2008, and I do not remember ever having an event like that.
Well, I
At
was
least
there,
since then.
But it used to be.
CEO.
So what I originally had my hand up for was just a couple of things. So the motion that we do something, and that's very broad. I guess there's two ways that I would normally suggest that we could do something. Normally, I'd like to point out we have limited staff capacity. So if we want to hold, if we want a reception to be held in Mahone Bay for volunteers from Mahone Bay, or volunteers in Mahone Bay, I would suggest we do it the same way we did with the art exhibit last year, which is the council establish a grant. We say, would anyone like to host a reception? And we're gonna pay for it, because
Yeah.
we don't have the capacity to actually do that. Further to that, I guess, as I mentioned, these are often done in coordination with other local units. So we may first want to take the step of looking into whether MODL does anything. But ultimately, it's our discretion.
MODL has a reception for the volunteers.
For the firefighters.
So it may just be an opportunity to, support what's going on at a regional level. But I guess those are the two ways that I would suggest we might go about it.
Move on, second. For the motion.
Oh, are you gonna make a motion?
I mean, if the motion were that staff bring back a report on doing something, rather than just that we do something, then I can put this commentary in the report, and then we can
I
just
will-
talk about it then.
Change my motion to read that the staff brings back a report on volunteer recognition every year,
On hosting a volunteer.
on hosting a volunteer recognition.
Second?
Second,
Suzanne,
yeah, okay.
So these things I mentioned, I'll put in the report, and then we can talk about it.
I have
On the
a
question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would this mean obviously that it wouldn't take place this year? Because April, would there be time to get a report together and have it approved and?
Fiscal year isn't end of March, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so if your concern
April
is
is-
timed around
oh,
the
it doesn't
April
have to
volunteer
be-
month, well,
it
I would
doesn't
like to bring a report back with time that something could conceivably be done.
okay.
But if council elected to create a grant opportunity, it would then be up to somebody to be prepared to take advantage of it and
Yeah.
run with it in April. Which, like, it doesn't have to be in April, but April is volunteer month, I think, so.
yeah, I would feel perfectly happy not to have it in April, because of the other things, and I have a question about that after we're finished with the.
We're ready to vote on the question? All in favor? Motion is carried.
So Deputy Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
I'd just like to ask staff a question about what the plans are for calls for volunteers, representative volunteers, for this volunteer week coming up in April. Because.
So, yeah, we've discussed, I think my understanding, what we've done in prior years is we've just put out advertisements seeking nomination. And so they're going out, I think, this week.
Oh, okay.
And Kelly's on that, and we'll put
Okay.
something out. I don't actually remember the different forms that we would use to advertise that, but I'm sure we'll get the word around.
Okay.
And we have about 5 weeks, something like that. So I think it's about the
When
same
is
time frame
volunteer?
as we usually do.
So one of the things that has been problematic in the past has been actually making the decision. We had one very embarrassing, it's been difficult to make the decision. And I hope that when we get the report or some information back from staff, that might have a suggestion as to how to actually make the decision. Is it going to be a vote by council after evaluating every nomination? Or is it gonna be draw a name out of a hat?
We can take that away to think about it.
Yeah.
I thought at the beginning of this term, we actually established a committee that's sole function was just to do that annually. To select, based on this ongoing issue, I thought that we did strike a committee, and the committee's objective was to get together and make the decision and make a recommendation to council. Didn't we do that? I think we did. Now, that was probably 4 years ago, we may not, and maybe my memory's foggy, but
It's a group of people on this. I don't remember either.
It's Councillor Wilson and Councillor Carter.
So, I mean,
okay.
is that the case? Well, fair enough. Well, anyway, if we can't dig out of the
So,
minutes what we've already decided.
Kelly
how
can
we're
bring
gonna
those
handle
names
this.
back to you guys. We'll look at what we did
Okay.
last time.
I thought we did that.
I totally slipped my mind.
That was, but that was really to
Yeah.
review applications for committees. It didn't include making a decision about the volunteer. meeting.
Oh, it didn't.
I don't think so.
I don't
Thought
know.
we decided on that though.
I mean, you can do it now.
I thought they came back with a recommendation last time. I seem to remember that.
I do.
Yeah, I do remember.
I do.
that.
Anyway, if not, we're on.
I can't say exactly what it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. But
Um,
maybe we can change that appointment and just add some.
ministerial decree.
Yeah.
Some
Well,
functions.
When you were saying we, you, right?
So. Are we good to move on? You'll.
Yeah, so I think in looking at the timeline, I think it is, you know, it's a little bit close, unfortunately, is that we would not be making an official determination till the April 9th council meeting, and the volunteer week is the 14th to 20th. And so I think it would probably behoove us, I'll go back and talk to Kelly about, if we did have a couple of council members to help, maybe we could know a little bit ahead of time, and everyone could say, yes, when we get to the meeting, we're good on this being the person, so that they could have more than a week's notice. So we'll talk to Kelly about that. We'll see what we can do.
I'd volunteer if I was here in the last, for the next meeting, but why don't we just have two counselors adjudicate the proposals or the nominations?
Yeah, I mean, it would be
And
helpful.
come to council with a recommendation, which I think would work well, wouldn't you think, Councillor Carter? That would address the
Yeah,
issue.
I'm a little ambivalent about it, but I think in the interests of, because we don't have a whole lot of time right now, that could work.
I prefer not to pass the hat anymore.
Are you volunteering me?
Well, we've already been voluntold for the past 4 years.
Okay, do you need a motion for that? No. Okay.
No, I think we're okay.
Good. Well, we can move on to.
7.2, I had an opportunity to meet with members of the Pool Society who passed along their offer and their expectation that they would be willing to staff and run the swimming pool in calendar year 2024 and on to 2025. Their thinking is that we need to make a decision soon, so that they could make, they can make funding applications, receive grants to support summer student hiring and lifeguard training and basically advertise and let people know that the pool will be opening. Obviously, that would require an investment. We've had, so my intent for this item 7.2 is to request a report from staff about the cost of opening the pool in this fiscal year, to see if that would be something that we could entertain and make an appropriation for. That was the intent of the item.
So you move the motion?
Are we?
I mean, I can say
Are
that
we-
you are aware that we'll be prepared to provide that report to the
Okay.
next meeting.
Yeah.
To the next
I guess
meeting.
the thing is, as you said, there is a lot of expediency required because in order to complete necessary maintenance work, if we're going to do it, we need to give the okay to a contractor by the end of this month in order to meet the actual pool season. So if we don't, I understand people wouldn't be prepared to make a decision tonight because you didn't have the information on the record here tonight, but I would suggest it probably needs to go to your next meeting and staff will be prepared to provide it.
The question I have around that is, so most of the financial decisions we make, we say, put it into the budget process. It looks like in this particular one, we'll be forced to commit to an expense before the budget is done.
I think, we can go back to the contractor with that question. So if we leave it kind of open-ended as the motion of the package says, not tying a particular timeline to coming back with the report, like part of that process can be verifying just how close we could cut it.
Yeah.
Right, it's my understanding we've got to the end of the month, but if we said, well, how about 2 more weeks, how does that look? We wouldn't be able to do a lot of the work with the ground as wet as it is now anyway. So I would hate to see us okay this and then have the work on repairs take until halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question was, I saw, I guess it was just an email with a list of costs. And I suppose because it isn't on our agenda, it's not official. But,
If people are prepared, you can action it. I just, it's not on the record.
I mean, I'm really ambivalent. I've talked to some people whose sun rises and sets on that swimming pool. As far as their family's concerned, it's a very important part of the fabric of this town. I've talked to other people who could care less whether we fill it in tomorrow. And so I don't like swimming, I don't go near it, but I'm inclined to move forward with all due haste and get the thing operating for the next 3 summers at whatever that cost was. Recognizing it might not be exactly spot on the dollar.
So from a process perspective, I think that will not be very, I would be hesitant to do that too. I think we have the information, we'll have soak time on it. At the next meeting, we'll have given the information out to the public. There'll be a process that will allow folks to comment and respond, and we, hopefully for us, it will have enough soak time for us to think about the appropriation. And if we can make a decision from what you've just said, if we can make a decision that night, I think we should be good to go. The question I just had was, we will have to be comfortable around, this is a commitment we're making.
And even though I'll bring the report to the March 28th meeting, I'll note in the report, if we've got confirmation that we could get the answer as late as such and such a date in April, at which time on receiving the report, council could defer it to the budget process. So like that could be an option. It just, even if they say we'll get it done in a certain time frame and then weather delays hit,
So
I just would not want to risk
I
it.
think, so information's coming to us in real time. I think that this was, good that we got this on the agenda. The expectation that there is, if we do approve this motion to request the report, and the report does show up sometime in the next couple weeks, there'll be some back and forth, and I think the report will have all the answers to all the questions that we may have, including the funding source and the eligibility of funding that we've received that make, so the funding.
I don't have all those answers.
So
tonight.
those kinds of questions, I think, will be there. So where's the money coming from? How long will this repair last? But I guess on a preliminary basis, I like what I heard. And I think the community will like the story as well. So if everybody would support moving forward with requesting the report, and we'll wait and we'll see what we get in 2 weeks. And I think it'll be well worth receiving.
Super.
Are we speaking to a motion now? Is there a motion on the?
It is to request the report.
Yeah, so the motion
Yes.
has been seconded too?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm still, okay, so speaking on the motion, I don't think.
Seconded now by Councillor
Hmm?
Lawrence Croft.
I second it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so now it's on the table.
No, yeah, right, that's right.
Yes, so I don't think we can make a decision tonight. I mean, I certainly support it, but next time, but not tonight, because the information that we're basing our decision on is so far not in, the public doesn't know what it is, so I think we have to have the information public.
Okay. So on the motion that staff council direct staff to provide a report on the potential maintenance cost associated with the pool for the 2024 season. On the question, all in favor?
So I got the motion is to have the report before the next meeting. Thank you.
So that you can allow us to make the decision.
Deputy Mayor,
That's okay.
can we just make sure, CAO, that the pool society knows that this item is gonna be revisited on the 28th? I think they're gonna be curious. I think we just sent them an email, reach out to Sarah.
Yeah, well, we're getting a lot of back and forth now with because the pre-design is still going on for we'll do that.
This is good news.
Oh, great.
Okay,
That's awesome.
thank you. Moving on to committee reports, 8.1 Policy and Strategy Committee, draft minutes. I believe there's a motion there.
It's a motion about setting future agendas, and I guess I'll note, because this came up, we've referred a couple things from the last meeting of council having to do with reports from other committees to policy and strategy. given the time sensitivity of those, because they were budget related, I'm assuming they are going to go on the March agenda. So whether or not you put it in here, that's my assumption, but if somebody moving this wants to say March noise bylaw and time to enforce parking and referrals from other committees or whatever, you can put that in. But I think we better talk about those in March, even if it will be a busy night.
How do you?
Okay, move that council schedule the following policy and strategy committee discussions. March, noise bylaw and time enforced parking, as well as referred items from committees. April special meeting.
I'm sorry about the way this is so difficult to read.
And
This is
human
an issue with
resources
my,
policies.
it's an issue with my computer that happens sometimes.
What does the 8th mean?
So special meeting. of
Oh,
policy.
We got two meetings in April.
Right,
Yeah.
oh, right. Okay, an April regular committee meeting, human resources policy. May subdivision bylaw and stormwater management bylaw. June, stormwater management bylaw. July, town council policy and committees policy.
You have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Wilson. On the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. South Shore Open Doors Association monthly report. Any
No
questions,
motion, so
comments?
so move to receive and file.
Okay, move to receive and file, Councillor now, or second it?
It just, I think we usually just say to accept.
Oh, do
the-
it, yeah, okay, separate report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Wilson. On the all in favor? Motion is carried. Nuremberg County Senior Safety Program monthly report. Councillor Ronald Scott.
I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to post the poster that was attached with that report somewhere in there, near our bulletin board or whatever, and also maybe have a posting in the next newsletter.
Social media.
And social media.
You have a second for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. I don't believe we have any new business. We do have a closed session item under 2.22(2)(e) contract negotiations. We just didn't mark it. Before we go to closed session, wonder if there's any questions from the public?
No.
No?
9 viewers. We're up to
How many are there?
9.
No.
Hmm.
Motion to go to closed session? Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Now. On the question, all in favor? Motion is carried. We'll go for a quick break before we.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just 1 second. I will disconnect all these things.
Oh, yeah, you gotta leave it running though.
Yeah, we have
because
to leave
David's
Zoom running.